Hi, welcome to Steve's Garage. I'm Steve, this is my garage. Today I'm going to work on some paint, water, drop, cloud, drippy photography. I think it's been done many times, lots of videos on the internet that show you how to do this, but I found there's a few tips that I found when doing it myself. Might be useful to others. I'll go through my setup quickly, show you how I took the pictures. Here's a couple examples. You can get drippy ones like this, or even sort of cloud ones like this. All in the same setup, just different mixture of the paint. Let's set up and I'll show you how it goes. All right, first thing you need is a container to hold all the water. A lot of people use fish tanks. What turns out when you fill this up with water, you squirt the paint in there, really you get one, maybe two shots, and then you have to dump it out, refill it again. So if you have a big fish tank, that's a lot of filling and emptying out, and it's a bit of a pain. So I went and found something like this, a little bit smaller, plenty big enough to show the clouds and the inks, and it's much quicker to fill and refill. So in my pictures, I wanted a black background. So I started, take this part here, started with a simple black background, black foam board, and black cloth on the bottom there. But I found what happens, I got two flashes, one on either side. They go in there and it still illuminates a bit. So I built this little house here to block the flash. So the flashes no longer can reach the background. Even used an old piece of foam board to cover the top. Then we put the container right there. And now when the flashes go off, it only illuminates here. Nothing in the background, you get total black. So next thing you need to do, fill this up with water. And then we need to get rid of the bubbles, but we'll get to that. Okay, ordinary tap water, nothing special, just fill it up. What else I did here? I also raised this up a little bit. Not necessary, but it just sort of helped with my setup and taking pictures and whatnot. So you'll notice, here, let me see if I get in closer so you can see. So you can see right off the bat, there's all kinds of tiny, tiny little bubbles all going to the top. This just let the water settle down. Usually needs to wait just about a minute or two because you don't want those bubbles in your picture. Each tiny little bubble will reflect the flashes and you'll see a really bright spot. Then, at this point, you can see there's still some little bubbles attached to the back here. You can go through, I don't know how well they come through in the video. Let me zoom in a bit. You can just pick at them to get rid of the bubbles, or use a squeegee, and that'll clean off the insides. What I found even easier, use like an eyedropper, and you just squirt water. You probably can't see what's going on in the camera, but this really does a good job of getting rid of all the bubbles that are sticking to the walls. And typically you still end up with a few little spots in your final image you have to touch up in Photoshop. But you want to get rid of as many of those bubbles as you can ahead of time. Now for the paint. You want some little container like this, dollar store. A little container that has a little spout on the end. I use this because the paint I use, you don't want to use straight. You need to water it down, mix it with some water to make it a little bit thinner. Turns out I'm just using regular house paint, latex, you paint on the walls. Easy water cleanup. Happen to have some left over. You'll want to try a nice dark color because once you water it down and then you put it into the water, when it makes those clouds, the darker the color, the more it's going to show up in your final image. I'm using just some syringe. This came from a printer ink cartridge refiller. I found if you mix 50-50 paint and water, that works really good for just putting a couple drops and letting the drops go through the water and you see the little tentacles, kind of like this one. Or if you want more of the cloud burst, where you squirt a whole bunch of paint in at once, then you don't want to get it quite that thin. So in that case, you probably want 2 parts to paint to 1 part of water. You may want to play with the ratios, try it out a few times. The paint you're using might work out differently than the paint I'm using. Clean the syringe. So that's 2 parts paint, and I'll do 1 part of water. seal it up. And mix it up. So once you're set up, got your camera in place, got the angle and whatever, what you want to do is put something into the tank that you can focus on. And especially something like this where I've put in at an angle, then you can look at the top where it's really close and at the bottom which is far away, then you can see if your depth of field is good. Take a few test shots once you're happy with that, and don't touch the focus and everything, then do your drops to take the pictures. So first I'll show you what it looks like when your paint that you're dropping in there is too thick. This is straight paint. Not sure if you saw that. Try that again. Not too exciting, but not really what we're after. So, back up here, try our mixed paint. Just do a little drop. You can see they drop much slower and then they start spreading out as they get further down. Then it's a matter of timing your pictures. Sometimes you put several drops in there. Use a nice macro lens, get your focus. Good flashes. And you can see already just after a few drops how much the paint sort of disperses and get these clouds and stuff in there. So you only get a couple shots, then you have to empty it out and try again. But before we do that, I'm going to thin the paint a little bit more, add one more part of water, so then it's 50-50. And I'll show you what happens when you squirt a whole bunch in there and get a bit more of a cloud shot. So when you're doing these ones, really you only get one shot at it because you squirt a lot of paint in there all at once. And then you got to have the paint in one hand and your hand on ready to take the picture in the other. Or you get a friend and you could, if you have somebody here helping you, they could put in two colors at the same time and then the other person snaps the picture. I don't have any friends, so I just did this by myself. Want to be my friend? Okay, let's try it out. Ready? 1, 2, 3. Cool. Then it's all a matter of just trying to snap the picture at the right time. And then we go clean it out. So at first, when I first started doing this, I had my all settings and everything, and I would turn the lights out and then do the drop and take the picture. It depends on all the settings you have on your camera and the strength of your flashes. You may or may not need that. If you leave the lights on and you take a quick picture, if the exposure looks good and your background looks nice and black, you don't need to turn the room lights off. If you're still seeing a little bit of gray back there, it's a little bit too bright, then kill the room lights and then try again. So now I've got this focused. Take this out. I'll take a quick picture here and show you what the bubbles look like. I leave the bubbles on the wall and we'll just take a picture without anything else in there. Maybe I'll leave the ruler so we can focus. So now you can see all those little specks from the bubbles. So I'll use my eyedropper here. Get rid of most of these bubbles. And you probably won't be able to get rid of absolutely every little thing. You notice on my container there's a couple blemishes on the plastic walls themselves. Those you just take out in Photoshop afterwards. There typically is a lot of touch-up you have to do with these kind of pictures anyways to clean them up. Okay. So let those remaining bubbles float to the top and we'll give it a shot. Okay, let's see how that goes if my timing's good. Take a test shot just to make sure there's no funny reflections and the background's nice and black. I think it looks good. 1, 2, 3. And that's about it. Now we need to dump it out, try again, see what we got. And just for the record, settings I'm using on my camera, I've got ISO set to 200 and my shutter is set to 125th of a second. That's just to match the flashes. Really, it's the flashes that freeze the motion, not your shutter speed. And I've got my aperture set to f9. Lens I'm using is an 18 to 55. Zoom in and out to whatever size you want to see if you want to fill the frame or just have it part of the frame. That, again, totally depends on your camera, if it's a macro lens or not. I'm not using a macro lens. Not totally necessary. I'm about 2 feet away from the water tank right now, and it seems to focus there just fine. The flashes, I have 2 flashes. Yongnuo 560s, fairly cheap flashes. You can buy them online, all kinds of places. I do have a couple of umbrellas on the flashes. Again, the 2 stands, 2 umbrellas. It was a pretty inexpensive set that I found online somewhere. I think like 120 bucks for the whole thing. And then the flashes are about $80 each. Don't need anything too expensive to do this kind of photography. You can get away with it on the cheap, like I have, because I'm cheap. Oh, and one other thing, I have the flashes set on about, let's see, 1/8 power. The higher the power that you set your flashes to, the longer the flash duration. So in fact, if you can set up the lighting so you drop your power on your flashes, it'll do a much better job at freezing the action. If you have your flashes at like a full power, time-wise, it's a much longer flash. It actually flashes multiple times to get the total light output, and you could end up getting some blur in your pictures. That's all there is to it. Turn off my flashes here. It's not all that difficult. It's just a little bit of setup, get the paint and then the timing, and then what really takes the time is repeating. Got to clean out the container, get the water, let the water settle, take a shot. Oh, got to dump it out again, over and over again, and you'll get the hang of how much paint to squirt in. You might want to thin your paint, you might want it a little bit thicker, depends what the effect you're looking for. And the rest of it is just touch up in Photoshop. Once you get the images, clean the background. Sometimes you want to boost your saturation, a little bit of clarity, that kind of thing. I'm not going to go through all the details in Photoshop, but what I'll do is I'll show some of the raw pictures and the final edited picture. I'll do that for a couple right after this, and then I'll show you some of my results of the other pictures I got. Thanks for stopping by. If you have any questions about the setup or anything I've missed or whatever, I'd be happy to answer any questions if I can. Please consider subscribing. Pass this on to a friend who might enjoy it. Better yet, if you try this yourself, send me your results. I'd love to see them. I find this kind of thing very interesting, the results you get, and everybody who tries it is going to come up with different results. I'd love to see what you end up with. Thanks for stopping by.